Trudeau government is once again cutting its own cap on the number of students that will be allowed into Canada, a cut of another 10%. In 2025, international student study permits will be reduced by 10% from the 2024 target of 485,000. That means that only 437,000 permits will be issued next year. Still a lot, but that number will be lower than what we've seen in the past, and that number will continue into the following year, 2026. Behind all this, of course, Canada's housing crisis, affordability concerns, and worries that too many international students are straining the system. It's something that the government is well aware of and has been under pressure to try and deal with. The government has announced recently a 2-year cap on international students, but again, they're choosing to extend it now and cut by another 10%. We're hearing from the immigration and employment ministers. Let's listen in for a moment there.
The Prime Minister said in August that the changes will come into effect on September 26th. He also said that the percentage of workers that businesses can have of foreign workers went down from 20% to 10%, and in census metropolitan regions where the unemployment is above 6%, we will not be processing these requests. I am confirming today that this change will also be in force in Quebec and in the streamlined processing system that does not have a cap.
Applicable to the traitement simplifié in Quebec, which currently does not have a cap limit. Nous avons également...
We also announced a reduction in the duration of the permits for low wages that goes from down to 1 year. This measure will exclude people in the agricultural sector and will include people in the streamlined processing system in Quebec. I also like to add that the list of regional metropolitan census areas will be updated every quarter with the most recent labor data in order to ensure that they meet the needs of Canadians and the unemployment rate going forward.
Again, the temporary foreign worker program is an accordion. It's meant to flex with the economy. When we have a high number of vacancies, we can bring in more people. And as the economy tightens, we close the accordion and we make it harder for people to come in, because Mark and I and our government want those jobs to go to Canadians. We want them to go to people who live here. We want them to go to students. We want them to go to newcomers. We want them to go to people who want to take those jobs. Point à la ligne. And so we're working hard every day to make sure there's more jobs for Canadians. We're seeing a slight increase in unemployment, which is a natural result of the high interest rates, which are also coming down. And now with inflation at 2% and having come down over 8 months, that's a critical piece to see a turn in the economy. And today we're making good on our promise to actually reduce the numbers in the temporary foreign worker program and to make sure that the program applies across the country. Merci beaucoup. And I'll turn now to my colleague, Mark Miller.
Thanks, Randy. Bonjour à tous. Merci, Randy, d'avoir...
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Randy, for opening us up today.
A year ago, we announced 3 big measures when it comes to international students. 1, a national cap and a redistribution of the student permits out of a spirit of fairness across the provinces and territories. 2, a very important limitation on spousal permits. And 3, as part of making sure that the system is dealing with the fraud that we had seen, a process of letter of acceptances that involves the provinces certifying that the institutions that international students are coming into are indeed those that we see on the applications. Those were very important, in addition to some of the measures that I announced in December with respect to the solvency requirements of students that have to come to Canada. Canada is not an inexpensive place to live in. And in addition to the work hour amendments that we have made that limit the work hours to 20 and now coming up 24 hours for students studying full time. We expect students to be doing exactly that. But let's set the table further a little. When you look at the growth that we have seen in people that are temporary residents of Canada, that's something that has grown almost exponentially over the last few years, from about 437,000 individuals in 2019 alone to about 1.2 million in 2023. That comes with consequences, but let's not also forget the importance that immigration generally, the importance of people that are here on a temporary basis has done for the economy. The Bank of Canada has said it, the International Monetary Fund has said it, the immigration writ large has been in part responsible for preventing us from going into a recession, has been important for the net growth in the gross domestic product. Again, this has been important, and it's been important to the growth of the country, but I think it's safe to admit that we have allowed certain aspects of this to get overheated, and probably for too long. I made in March an announcement, an important one, to reduce the number of people that are here temporarily from 7% to 5% over the next 3 years. The Bank of Canada rightly highlighted that a number of the measures that we have taken, while important, were not sufficient in order to address that number and to give people the satisfaction that those numbers were going to come down in that period. Today, along with the announcements that Randy is making, we are announcing further measures, specifically, importantly, with respect to international students, and a few other ones that I will go through here shortly. First, I'd like to say that the measures that we've taken with respect to international students, and again, taking a step back, international students and the postgraduate work permits that come with it, occupy about 50% of the temporary workers that are here in Canada. The programs that Randy administers about 10-15%, depending how you're counting. So the growth in the international student space, along with the postgraduate work permits that come with them, the spousal permits that come with them, are ones where we owe it to Canadians, and in the context of an economy where the labour market in some areas is constricting, we need to adjust accordingly. I would say that the measures that we've taken up to now are working. You have seen more than anecdotal evidence that there has been an impact on certain rental markets where students are more prevalent. And this is an announcement in advance of the annual level plan that I know a number of you are eager to hear me on, that I will be announcing on November 1st. And integrating for the first time ever a fuller picture of what immigration looks like in our country and what we are projecting for the economy, for Canada, for our social cohesion for the next 3 years. So today I am announcing 6 additional measures, and I'll go through them in a little bit of detail because I think that's important. Tout d'abord, nous allons réduire.
First of all, we will be lowering the target for study permits by 10% in 2025 over 2024, and we'll be maintaining this level for 2026. That means that we are aiming to deliver up to 437 study permits in 2025 and 2026, which would represent a decrease of approximately 36% over 2023. Then we will exempt fewer students from the cap. That means that people who weren't included in that cap in January, that is, people who are master's or PhD students, will be taken into account in this cap.
Looking at the numbers, you will see the number I announced is higher as part of the first measure I'm taking, and that's because of Measure 2, in which we are carving in master's and PhD programs. So simply put, the international student cap is here to stay. Certains étudiants étrangers sont mieux.
Some international students are better prepared to integrate and succeed in Canada, particularly postgraduate students who meet the needs of the Canadian labour market, and that is why we are reserving about 12% of the available cap for these students, and we will be aligning the post-graduation work permit program with our economic priorities.
Years, and I think this is important, we expect these changes to yield approximately 300,000 fewer study permits. À partir du Ça, c'est la troisième mesure.
That was the third measure. As of November 1st, we will be introducing new language proficiency requirements for post-graduation work permit applicants, aligned with the requirements of the permanent residence streams.
Language benchmark, CLB, level 7 for university graduates and CLB 5 for college graduates will be required for anyone applying for post-graduation work permit on or after November 1st of 2024. We know that people that can speak the language are
All right,
better
starting to get a little technical
to
here, so
succeed
let me
in
jump
Canadian
in. We're
society.
following this breaking news out of Ottawa. The Trudeau government is further reducing its own cap on international students, cutting it by another 10%. Here's how that's going to play out. Next year, the number of international student permits will be reduced down to 485,000, will be reduced by 10%. For some context, there were more than 1 million international students in Canada back in 2023. That was an increase of almost 30% over the previous year. As well, foreign temporary workers, there were more than 1 million of them in Canada in 2023. And that does not include permanent residents who were allowed to come to Canada and become permanent residents, another 500,000 or so. You can see what this has done. A lot of pressure on the government to act because of the housing crisis, affordability crisis. So now they are drastically cutting the number. The immigration minister there, Mark Miller, basically admitting that we've allowed this to go too far and for too long. The number of newcomers we know has put a strain on Canadian society. Housing, public services, infrastructure, and unemployment issues. Now the government choosing to act to try and cut down some of those numbers.